Hi, and welcome to a video a bit different today. We're down to business. I'm Andrew Beattie. We're doing a virtual video today, given the restrictions we have around social distancing and that sort of stuff. But a lot of our videos in recent history have been around helping business owners in the disciplines they need to focus on as a small business owner, and really to make a better business and grow their business or achieve their goals, etc. Things like marketing, IT, finance, tax, etc. That's all been really stopped in its tracks or changed in a big way. In a very quick time frame, being the last 3 to 4 weeks, this thing called COVID-19 has come about on most of our radar. I know if you're like me, a few weeks ago you're thinking that was something overseas, and all too quickly that has changed our environment, our landscape, our businesses, and I think a lot of us are struggling with it because it's not really something we've done. There's not a lot of reasoning for it. There's no one to blame per se. This is something that's come up and affected all of us. We've heard the Prime Minister talk about rolling it together, and we really are. There's not too many people that won't be affected, whether that be now or a flow-on effect or in some way, shape or form. And as we've seen over the last few weeks, whether it be me talking to my own people, in the media, talking to clients, etc., a lot of people are struggling with it. They're struggling to reconcile it. They're struggling to hit their head around the why, and then that's hard for us. They're struggling with the change, working from home, that in itself, video conferencing rather than being in people's surroundings and talking to people every day. A lot of this thing is very hard. So rather than focus on necessary business improvement, or as hopefully you'll see that will be the case throughout this video, I thought I'd grab a good friend of mine on, Richard Ford. Richard's a personal coach, works with a lot of business owners. I call him, he works with me, I call him the head coach because he's got a fair case there. But I've asked Richard to come on and talk about a few things around this changing environment and how people can better cope. One thing about the general stress related to what we find ourselves in at the moment, right through to handling distractions, through to just our general fears about where we might end up, and the fact that we don't know what is around the corner and how long this will go for, etc. I mean, you've heard a lot of dialogue within formal media and social media platforms and print. I'm not saying we have all the answers, but I think working on some of these aspects and addressing them with what you can control can really help you get through this and make you probably a better business leader and better business owner on the other side. So welcome, Rich.
Thanks, Andrew. Nice to be here, and welcome to everyone out there.
And Rich, maybe before we get into some of the key points, why don't you give the viewers a bit around how you generally work and what sort of things you work on?
Yeah, well, so, I'm a personal coach and been coaching in Newcastle since 2005. Work with a lot of CEOs, business owners, managers, leaders, leadership teams, really about self-awareness, right? How to understand what you're thinking and how to change that, what motivates and drives your feelings, what motivates and drives your choices and your behavior. So I work with a lot of people around how to handle that, how to manage that, how to change that. And, in business, how to connect with what's really true for you and what you want to create in your business. So do that, work a lot of one-on-one stuff with people, and do group stuff with leadership teams.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I think, I mentioned you work with myself and some of my partners, etc. And we do a lot where I guess less is more, like trying to get a lot more focus and really owning our issues and that sort of thing around how we can influence. And, you'd be fair to say there's no better time than what we find ourselves in the moment to apply some of these principles. With regard to...
Yeah, well, it's really...
Sorry, you go.
Yeah, it's really challenging times at the moment because, the COVID-19 has created a lot of change, and very quick and rapid change. And it keeps changing almost daily. It's slowed down a bit now, but change creates a lot of fear. It creates a lot of anxiousness, and a lot of self-doubt. And then one of the things I really help business owners do is, gain clarity for themselves, so they know, they can navigate what they need to do, right? And so when we drop into our fears and our anxiousness and our self-doubt, it robs us of the ability to have the clarity, right? So I think it's important in, managing change, to manage it by dealing with the fears, the anxiousness, and the self-doubt.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the people watching, even who haven't been exposed to some of this stuff before, would probably start to think it's a bit of fluff to a point,
Yeah.
but also the stuff that we're talking about, by actually letting it breed, affects you on how you react to it as well. So, what we're hoping to get out of this, short video or short session now, and we may follow it up with some others because I think it's great content, is a real pragmatic approach, I guess, and some key points of things people can work on and actually get them through this. As I said, not only for now, but lifelong lessons while ever they're in business and individual for that matter. But really stuff that's not just talking about the theory, but things people can actually apply. That'd be a fair point.
Yeah. No, that's a really relevant point, and I guess that's the purpose of what we want to do today is give some people some really practical, support around to help them on a day-to-day basis. I believe this, that, the theory is great, but if you can't put it into practice, it's worth nothing to you. So, let's give people, some practical tools. It feels to many people, and certainly people I've spoken to, like we've got no control over this. It's just happening beyond our control. However, the one thing we do have control is our perception and how we respond to it. You do control how you think. And the difficulty is, your thinking, your thought patterns create your feelings, and we're in a lot of feeling stuff at the moment. So we feel scared and anxious. And if you're able to, feel the feelings and not react to them, you allow them to pass through you more quickly, and then you can change your thought patterns. If you change your thought patterns, you don't have those feelings anymore. So I think it's really important when we talk about that, just very, in a very theoretical way, is that we've got to stay present in the moment. What a lot of people do when they get into their fear is they start thinking about the future, and in your fear, you tend to catastrophize around it. Right?
So just on that, when you say stay present, and you're saying, now as opposed to the future, but what are some of the other things about staying present that people should be aware of?
Well, staying present means, yes, thinking about what's actually happening now, but more importantly, thinking about what you know now, right? So what you know now, not what you think is going to happen in the future, but what you know now. And so, things like, well, right now in this space, I'm okay. I know what I'm doing, right? I have the skill. I can handle what's going on. Yeah. And you apply what you know now to what's actually happening now, as opposed to thinking about the future and trying to work out what you're going to do in the future.
Yeah, like I imagine there'd be a lot of people, as we speak right now, have lost jobs or lost a lot of income. And that uncertainty, not knowing what the future looks like, would be a hard thing to bring them back to the present.
Oh, absolutely, because it will produce a whole lot of feelings, a whole lot of anxiousness more than anything else, a whole lot of worry, a whole lot of, people call it stress, but a whole lot of scaredness. So you basically need to do two things, in my view, is that one, you need to be able to feel those feelings, right? So it's being present, feel the feelings, not have them mean anything about whatever's going on, not having it mean anything that you're not worthy, or you're not worthy of working, or it's going to be like this forever. It's like feeling the feelings, allow that emotion to pass through your body, and then start to, if you can, look at it differently. And so looking at it differently can include things like, well, right now I'm okay. What is it that I need to do right now in this moment, as opposed to what does I need to do in 6 months or 12 months? It's no, what do I need to do right now? And I think fundamentally, the starting point is for people to get that they're okay and they can handle it. It's a really fundamental, affirmation or mantra, if you like, right, as a starting point. Because ultimately what you want to be feeling is as calm and relaxed as you can, given the circumstances, of course, so you've got the clarity to make the next choice. It's the clarity that's the important piece.
I guess the other piece there is when you're saying be present. To me, what I've been noticing, especially, in my world where we're dealing with a lot of the stuff that the government's put out, etc., there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of people not dealing necessarily in fact. I would think being part of what you're getting at about presence and making sure you're focused on what you know now is making sure you're referring to accurate sources of information as opposed to everything that's getting thrown in our face from media.
Oh, absolutely. And, it's about getting the data that you need, right? And so, what's been happening, and I notice this with myself, is that there's so much information coming at us very quickly, and it has a propensity to drop people into their fear and their anxiousness, right? Because you then got to start to work out what you're going to do with the new information and how it impacts you and how you're going to respond to it. So being present allows you to actually, trust yourself, right? Look at the data, go to the data that you feel that you can rely on, and then importantly, trust your own inner guidance and your own wisdom and your own knowing about, okay, what's the next thing that I can do for me or for my business that's actually true and works for me. Yeah.
And I think you also need to take into account, um, when you start to talk about what is out there, have you reacted to it in the appropriate way? Have you, sought guidance? I mean, we're not trying to be flippant here and say there's not real issues, because there is. There's big health issues, economic issues. This isn't about whether it's not as serious as what it's made out to be. It is. But as you're saying, how do we stay present? Rely on real information, rely on fact, rely on trusted sources around us that can invoke the right action.
Yeah, and I would just add to that: rely on your own inner guidance. What feels right for you, in terms of which way do you need to go. Like like yourself, most business leaders, they know what they're doing, right? They haven't got to where they've got to because they don't know stuff. You do know stuff. The only thing that gets in the way of you knowing what's right for you and what's right for the business is the fear and the anxiousness and the self-doubt that creeps in because of things like, constant and rapid change. So, we can handle the change. It's different, it's scary, but the truth is we can handle it. And if we, bring ourselves into the moment, in the present moment as best we can and not catastrophize about the future, it allows us to relax into the clarity that we need in terms of, okay, well, this is the path that I need to go. This is the path that the business needs to go. We need to move away from this thing because that's not really working for us. We go down this road. So it's, there's no right or wrong about it. It's just, okay, deciding what's right for the individual person or the individual business.
Mm. And what's some of the, I guess, real practical techniques? You've spoken a lot about, letting it feel and trying to control your anxiousness and that sort of stuff. But what are practical techniques people could utilize to help there?
Yeah. First, the most basic and simple one is to breathe. Do some conscious breathing. Just stop in the moment and breathe consciously. Right? Maybe 5 to 10 breaths. If you like, we can't breathe consciously for a long period of time because all breathing is done unconsciously. So if you took 5-10 breaths, it will actually bring you back into the moment. Yeah. The second thing, which I think is probably the most powerful thing, is to acknowledge what you're thinking and you're feeling. So let's just say I'm feeling really anxious about the future. Like I would go, I'm feeling really anxious about what's going to happen. And I'm thinking that this is not going to work out. It's not true, of course, but it's what I'm thinking and feeling. So I'm just going to honor that and feel what that feels like without reacting to it and without doing anything with it. And so I might physically stop and just close my eyes and feel that and breathe at the same time. And it will pass. And what happens is then you get clarity and you get a new thought pattern occurring. Yeah. The moment, I think the way to change anything very quickly is to acknowledge its existence, right? So what a lot of people tend to do is that when they're in a whole lot of feeling, it feels very uncomfortable for sure, and they're not willing to acknowledge it. They try to push it away and resist it.
Yeah.
Right? The quickest way to move through your feelings and change the thought patterns is move towards them. So feel it, be okay with it. Make sure you don't have it mean anything about you in terms of you're not worthy or you can't do what you're doing. You're just feeling anxious. And the energy passes, the feeling passes. Hard to describe, but that's what happens. And that then allows you to have a new thought pattern and make different decisions or different choices.
Mm.
Sometimes even the same choice, but because you're now doing it without all the emotion, it's a different scenario.
Yeah, and I think it's important to state that, we're not saying this is easy either, because, you work with people for years on these concepts. We're throwing it up here in a few minutes. And I think the other thing to state, that before people look at this and go, well, you don't know what I'm going through. Well, I think both of us, and I'll say it for you as well, know exactly what we're going through, because all of our businesses have been affected.
Oh, that's right. So, my business is significantly affected. And, you're right. This takes practice. It's a practiced art. When I was learning this, I was really rigorous and disciplined about, how I looked at things. And, the theory is like this: your perceptions control your experiences, and you're the one who's in control of your perceptions. And so for me, when I learned that, I decided that I wanted to look at everything in a way that actually created me feeling relaxed and calm. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not talking about being Pollyanna, because it's not about not responding to stuff. It's about looking at it differently and responding. So it's not about sitting back and doing nothing, right? That's fear.
I think that's a key point. Like, and I'll use a no names base, of course, but a client the other day that is in an industry that's been, the tap's been turned off overnight by the lockdowns, the government, and not likely to come back in, not even the 6 months or whatever you believe this lockdown's for, but probably well beyond that. And they were absolutely in that fear space. As anxiety was everything.
Yeah.
By bottling in and holding themselves, that was not recognised, was not doing anything. At the end of the day, we managed to get them to come on, ask questions, talk about it, let's go through it, deal in fact.
Yes.
By after a couple of calls, we've got a plan in place that sees them right through for not just the foreseeable future, for quite a while, taking into account, some of the government incentives and that sort of thing. But all of a sudden, their mindset's in a totally different space and can relax a bit more.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what happened. I had a client I was just speaking to yesterday who, has a large business, a large number of team, people in his business, and he wanted to talk to all of them about, how to move in a supportive way. He was fearful about that at first, anxious. We spoke about that, helped him release that. And what happened was he had a very connected, supportive conversation. And what happened was the team started to get on board. He had to reduce salary, and people were going on annual leave, and started to volunteer job sharing. The thing was that by moving out of his fear and his anxiousness, he was able to come up with a different way of looking at it. He then responded from that place and got a different outcome than what he had expected to when we started speaking about, having to talk to his team. The other thing I think is important is, one way to move your thoughts very quickly is start to look for the benefit on the opportunity of what's occurring. Now, it's really challenging in a situation like this, which, we've never confronted before, and it's, so challenging, and there's a lot of unknown. But if you're willing to look at it and go, okay, what is the benefit? What's the opportunity that I have for myself here? So it might be as simple as, well, I've got some time to rest. With the same client I was speaking to yesterday, the opportunity for him was, he said, well, you know what, I've got to start to come back into my business and look at it differently and start to clean up some of the things that were there that I had noticed, like excess overtime. And so I've become more hands-on and more connected to my people. So, whilst it's challenging and he's sort of not liking what's occurring, he's still getting some I guess, benefit, some opportunity to do something different, which will probably support him. Well, not probably, I think will support him long term, when we come out of this. And we will come out of this at some point.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about being ready for the other side, because it will have an end date. We're a bit uncertain as what that end date is at the moment, but there will be an end date. And I think the positive I'm seeing is the amount of innovation and new ways of doing things that I've seen from business owners and businesses in their own right. The cafes and the restaurants, the perfect example. Never did delivery, overnight turn on delivery, okay, and give themselves new income streams. Then you look at, we've got an office of, a couple of offices, 250 people, had to turn them into remote workers fairly quickly. You make it happen. So I totally agree with there's some great things that are happening out of this that will not only benefit short term, but should apply long term benefits.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing for me, and how I want to support people, is that your fear and your anxiousness and your self doubt paralyzes that innovation and creativity. And all creativity and innovation comes from the clarity, right? And the clarity comes from being relaxed and calm. So it's a bit of a circular thing. And I truly believe that people know what to do. Yeah, you know what to do. It's just becomes very clouded when you drop into those space. So
Yeah.
we have control over what we think and how we think about things and how we are willing to perceive and look at things. And if we're willing to actually take that on board, bring yourself into the present moment, and bring yourself in the present moment by doing things such as I said, breathing, right? Simply ask yourself, tell yourself, oh, look, I'm okay right now in this moment, right? You could ask yourself questions like, well, what do I need to do right now? Okay, well, I don't need to do anything. Sometimes it's, okay, well, I, want to implement a different strategy here. Yeah. But that gets you in that place where you're relaxed and calm, a bit detached, and you get the clarity and you get the innovation and the creativity. And that's where all the powerful things come from, in
Yeah.
my opinion. Yeah.
So we've spoken a lot about that anxiousness and fear and dealing with that just to bring yourself back and to be present. Okay, and I think that's a key point, and you've given some points to, I guess, guide people how to do that.
Yeah.
Again, a lot more to it, but just to move on in the interest of time for today, there's been a lot of people with not just change to create anxiety, but change itself. I want to talk a bit about how you better manage change and handle change. Like for instance, the working from home thing with all the family in the one spot and homeschooling and all this sort of stuff. I know that's been quite the change for me, but generally on change, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, change is scary because we are dealing with something that's unknown. Yeah. And that in itself starts to create self-doubt. Yeah. So I think the way to understand it is, if again you come back to something very simple and powerful, is, I'm okay and I can handle this. And if we actually stop and think about how we've always done things, we've always had times where we've done something new, something different. But if you look back, we've always managed to work our way through that, right? So you become more familiar with it, and you settle into it. It's the same here. It's like, okay, I am scared, I am anxious, I'm nervous because this is something new, and so, but over time, if you just, make that okay, and you repeat to yourself or tell yourself, look, it's okay, I can handle this, I can get support if I need to. What happens is that the change, it doesn't feel unknown anymore, it starts to become familiar. So, us, for instance, me doing the Zoom thing with you today is something I have not done. I've done most of my coaching face to face. So all the technology stuff is quite new to me. Yeah, been around for a while. Yeah, that's right. So change is scary because of the unknown. Yeah, and it's the unknown plus our mindset tends to be unconsciously that we can't handle it. So we change the thought pattern and say, well, I can handle it. I have support around me. I know where to get the support. And if I don't know where to get the support, I'm going to ask somebody who can support me in finding the right support. And those two things together help you manage the change. Now, I think the thing that sort of adds more gravitas to all of that is the anxiousness that occurs, right? And so what I'd like to share with everyone out there is that the only reason we feel anxious about anything is because we're thinking about the future, but thinking about it from a catastrophizing way. It's called future projection, right? And so when we talk about bringing yourself back in the present, the reason to do that is to stop the anxiousness that occurs, right? So anyone that's feeling anxious is imagining that what's going to happen in the future is not going to work out in some way, right? It's really simple in terms of theory. It really knocks us about a lot. The answer to it is to bring your mind back out of that future projecting stuff. It's a bit of a trap for us because we have been conditioned to do a whole lot of goal setting, and people, it's powerful to do goal setting and choose what you want to happen in the future, but you can't let your mind stay in the future. If you keep on focusing on the outcome, it's like sport. If you focus on the outcome as opposed to the process, right, you don't get the outcome you want. So, you know, um, keeping yourself present as best you can, and I'd say it is a practice art, and it's not something you do once and that's it, it's done. You probably have to keep doing it time and time again. um, is the way to stop the anxiousness.
Well, and that's a good point, because so many of us have said for too long that we haven't got time. Well, can't use that as an excuse so much anymore.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. So I've said to you many times in our coaching, less is more, right? So you can create more time for yourself by actually dealing with your fears, dealing with your anxiousness. And the reason you create more time for yourself is because you get the clarity,
Yeah.
right? You get the clarity, you know what to do, you know what direction to go. Or even if the clarity is simply, well, you know what, I don't need to do anything and I'm okay with that at the moment. Or the clarity might be, I don't know what to do, but I do know who to speak to. I can, ring and ask some advice from Andrew. So the answer will come if you create the space for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And on that note, we'll start to wrap up. But, for me, the key things I'm seeing from people at the moment is that fear and anxiousness, and then how they navigate and try to react to the change. So some key points, I think you've shared, that they're very interrelated, and it's an art to practice. But, the right thing, breathing, acknowledgement,
Yeah.
seeking out factual advice or even sounding boards, and realizing that you will be okay, and get a plan in place. There's a lot of people that are thinking it's only them in this situation where, as I said earlier, nearly everyone I'm speaking to in some way, shape or form is affected. So we need to realize that, understand what we can control ourselves, focus on what we can control, utilize the correct information to hand to get a plan that sees us through for when we bounce back. And I think some of the things I wanted to cover off that you've hit the nail on the head with is, we really need to look at the point of view of how they utilize this, not just when we're in a crisis, but ongoing.
Yeah, that's right. So, and the thing I would add to everything you said, which I think is really accurate and complete, is that it's also about being willing to ask for support, rather than try to do this by ourselves all the time. Yeah, I think that's a really important part of this, and that's what I think it's meant by we're on this together. So, if you're stuck, get the support from somebody. Ask a friend, ask your, business advisor, ask me. I think that's very important. And I think, sometimes the thought that just came to me, when we're talking about acknowledging to help you stay present, I think if you can actually, talk about what's going on for you, right? Acknowledge it, have a bit of a download, right? That brings you back into the present moment as well. And it also clears the thought patterns that allow you to actually look at it different ways. So just the process of having a bit of a download, or what they call a bit of a dump, it's an important process. So someone to do that with is I think very, very powerful. They don't even have to understand or know what you're talking about. It's just the process of you verbalizing it that helps clear the fogginess.
Yeah, and you can do that in so many ways now. People are getting used to technology. Look at us today. I said myself, we're so busy in our day-to-day lives. I've caught up with more people since we've been in a bit of a lockdown over technology than I have in years, and it's a nice little upside to what we're going through. So I guess there's no shortage of ways to do what you talk about, have that dump down or reach out to people, because it's probably going to be mutually beneficial.
Oh, that's right. And even if you haven't got anyone, you can write out what you're thinking and you're feeling. I've been doing a lot of that myself. So it's a great release, right? Great release. And it just allows you to get the clarity, which I think is important.
Well, Rich, thanks for that. And to all the viewers, it is something a bit different than what we usually cover off on, but it is really relevant for the leaders out there, for not just in business owners, but also from your teams, and generally, we're all going through something here. So, Rich, thanks for your time.
Thank you, all the viewers.
Until we get the next video that comes up, thanks for joining us. So, cheers.
Pleasure.